changes at HUD that will be beneficial to property owners and developers. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to put their phone on mute in order to cut down on the background noise. The purpose of the webinar is to share with you some of the changes recently implemented by HUD to improve customer satisfaction. I've been focused on the HUD program since 2001, and I'd have to say that these are some of the most positive changes that I've seen. As an overview of the presentation, Keith Gleckel, the CEO of Churchill, will speak briefly about the company. I will then discuss the transformation, what it is, and also why and how it is being implemented. We will then have Dan Duda present the benefits of FHA financing, the new changes for LIHTC transactions. Next, Jerome Sullivan will speak briefly about the main FHA products and the recent changes to underwriting. Following Jerome will be Aniko Rakita. She'll discuss the favorable changes to the mortgage insurance premiums. We'll then have our guest speakers, Brad Fountain, Kelsey Shaw, and Angelique Cruz of Partner Engineering and Science, discuss energy efficiency, changes to the replacement reserve schedule, and environmental issues. I would also like to introduce Wendy Stamness as Churchill's FHA Chief Underwriter. She has over 29 years of experience with HUD programs and is part of our team. She and her group provide a wealth of FHA experience that supports all facets of our HUD transaction. In order to keep the presentation as brief and concise as possible, I would like to ask that you contact us directly with any questions you might have. Contact information will be provided at the end of the webinar and can also be accessed on the Churchill website. And once again, I would like to ask that everybody put their phone on mute to reduce the background noise. Now, I would like to introduce Keith Gleckel.
Thank you, Skip. And I would also like to welcome all of you to our webinar today on HUD, on the updates to the MAP guideline and to the stuff here, the transformation and reorientation. Excuse me, if there's people talking, if they could put their phone on mute, we would most appreciate it. Everybody could do that. Anyhow, with that, I want to welcome also our co-presenters, Partners Engineering and Science, so they'll be also adding a lot of information to this presentation. The MAP guide was first published approximately 60 days ago, and it takes effect very shortly. And we wanted to wait to have our webinar until after the mortgage bankers HUD lenders meeting that occurs twice a year. That way we could get the best information and give the most clarification on what's going to be happening with the MAP guide, and also on the newest updates on HUD reorganization and transformation. The question I'd have to all of you is, have you looked at HUD lately? We're pretty excited about it. Certainly a lot of positive things are occurring. The HUD execution, in my view, and I think in Churchill's view as a whole, is going from good to great. We're very, very excited about the future prospects with HUD. My hat's off on some of the very innovative things that they're doing as we move forward. Two reasons why I'm excited about that is primarily the HUD transformation, which is really a major organization of HUD, and secondly, the updated MAP guideline that we think is going to be more helpful and beneficial. And some of the benefits that will be coming out of this is a streamlining and a faster underwriting processing time, which is obviously beneficial to everyone. Increased accountability, which we as lenders working and interacting with HUD, we think is very important. And then another big item that we're going to be talking about is the big change with the MIP insurance, or the MIP fees, both for affordable housing and for those that opt on market rate projects to do to build a green project or a rehab project. So these are really exciting things that are occurring, and we think it's only going to get better as the process matures. But anyhow, before we get into that, I just wanted to touch just for a second or two on Churchill, about Churchill Stateside Group. We're a privately held financial company. We specialize in both debt and equity finance in multiple areas. Certainly, one of our major disciplines is in affordable housing, both on the equity and the debt side. But in addition to that, and appropriate for this discussion, we're also involved in renewable energy installations that use the tax credit, both also on the equity and debt side. And then we're involved in various state low-income housing tax credit initiatives, both on a federal and a state level. And then also recently got into the historic credit area also. So those are the highlights of, more specifically, if you look at our product lines, we are very happily a USDA RD 538 lender, providing both construction and permanent financing for the smaller, more rural multifamily developments. We are a construction finance. We provide construction financing in a multiple of areas, including affordable, historic, and renewable energy installations. Obviously, we're here today to talk about FHA HUD. We do all types of HUD executions, from construction to permanent and all the way through healthcare. We're a tax credit equity syndicator that specializes in, I noted, federal and state low-income housing tax credits. And then we also have a mortgage brokerage arm that works with life insurance companies and some of the assets that they work in. The company is broken down into a number of subsidiaries, all with the parent being Churchill Stateside Group. Churchill Mortgage Investment, which is our HUD MAP lien and RD and Ginnie Mae issuer. Churchill Stateside Securities, which is our broker-dealer network that deals with our institutional investors. Q10 Capital, or Q10 Churchill Financial, which is our mortgage banking entity arm. And then really it's a combination of Churchill Equity and Churchill Renewable, even though they're separate entities, that deal with our equity and historic investing, and then also our renewable equity investments, and much of that is involves with institutional investors. Anyhow, with that, I'm very excited that you're all in attendance, and I'm now going to turn it over to Skip Santos to continue with our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. The HUD transformation, which is formerly known as Multifamily for Tomorrow transformation, the Office of Multifamily Housing will complete this transformation during 2016, which includes changing the way it works from a 1970s operating model to a 21st century model that applies industry best practices. It improves its ability to manage risk, deliver excellent customer service, also increases accountability and national consistency. HUD leadership wants to interact and work as a partner with its customers, and as part of that, HUD has acknowledged that the multifamily portfolio has a low default rate, and it is taking measures to make HUD programs more attractive, which can be seen by its improved underwriting criteria and reduced mortgage insurance premiums. The transformation's purpose is to reduce processing time and to utilize HUD resources more effectively. The use of a single underwriter model will allow the HUD reviewer to view the transaction in its entirety instead of reviewing only one portion at a time. The reviewer can pull in a technical expert as needed. Previously, each discipline waited until the prior reviewer was finished. To facilitate the transformation, HUD provided 6 weeks of training for frontline staff and for leadership in each region, with the goal of standardizing the application processing so decisions can be made faster and overall review time can be reduced. Although HUD has consolidated numerous offices across the country into 5 regions, each region will utilize underwriters from any region, preventing workflow bottlenecks. HUD will also track processing times and is holding the regions more accountable. Fort Worth was the first to transform, and it is processing transactions faster than before. Again, all of this is being implemented to allow for consistency and improved efficiency. The 2016 MAP Guide will be effective 30th, which will provide consolidated guidance incorporating multiple notices, letters, and other memorandum. HUD carefully considered and included industry comments in the preparation of the 2016 map guide. HUD is also hosting multiple clarifying calls with the industry to encourage additional dialogue. Wendy, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, thank you. This is Wendy Stamnes. And this our conversation with HUD and the industry is not over. Churchill continues to work with the industry and HUD to obtain further clarification on these changes discussed here today, and to offer additional suggestions to improve FHA program compatibility with industry standards. Also, HUD will be issuing ongoing question and answers. Therefore, there will be ample opportunity for continued dialogue to make additional improvements to the HUD execution with respect to efficiency and ease of use. Our team will keep you updated on all of these items. Thanks, Skip.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, the next slide shows the regional office map, which identifies the various reorganized territories into 5 regions. Now, please keep in mind that the slides will be available on the Churchill website for your reference. On to the map guide. The Office of Multifamily Housing recently published its 2016 map guide with the intention to reduce the time required to approve loan applications and to assure consistent application of program requirements and credit standards among all HUD processing offices. The new map guide delegates more underwriting responsibility to map lenders, including all relevant guidance published by FHA since the map guide was last updated in 2011. All necessary underwriting and program requirements have been consolidated into this document. HUD has also designed standardized narratives and checklists that will not only speed up initial screening, but it will also assist the HUD reviewer in locating data and analysis, which will expedite underwriting. Another improvement that HUD has made is that it will no longer approve third-party vendors. This usually took a couple of weeks to accomplish, so by delegating this to the lender, the processing time will be reduced. Open communication is being encouraged between HUD and the lender to improve efficiency in processing applications as well. HUD is also embracing technology. This will provide for a much quicker communication to solve issues promptly. Most correspondence will be through email and the use of an electronic application, which is now being encouraged. Also, as an example, HUD moved to electronic payment of fees, including the application fee and inspection fees, which were previously mailed to HUD. Additional written guidance has been included in the map guide to remove ambiguities that previously might have taken time to negotiate a resolution. Written guidance will remove the need for some waivers, which may have previously needed headquarters approval, thus slowing the processing of applications. Some repetitive waivers have been simplified to standard operating procedures, reducing processing time as well. This also allows for less misinterpretation and, again, encouraging consistency between HUD offices. Next, Dan Duda will briefly discuss the benefits of FHA financing. Dan?
Thanks, Skip. For those of you who are not familiar with the benefits of FHA financing, they can be shown on your screen right now. One, you do have non-recourse loans these are guaranteed by HUD, and they are all non-recourse to the sponsorship of the transaction. So no matter what, if it's acquisition, if it's a refinance, if it's a new construction, substantial rehab, or a mod rehab, they're all new construction, even through that construction period. These loans are also securitized as a Ginnie Mae, which allows the sponsor access to capital at a reduced interest rate due to the low risk associated with the government guarantee. In addition, all of these loans can extend up to 35 years for the acquisition and refinance, up to 40 years for a new construction or sub-rehab. In addition, the construction period on these new construction or sub-rehabs are also only interest-only payments. This HUD mortgage insurance program also allows for higher loan-to-values for acquisition or refinance transactions, and also higher loan-to-cost for the new construction and sub-rehab transactions, as well as lower debt service coverage than found in the marketplace. In addition, these are all assumable, and all of these interest rates are rocked prior to construction or acquisition. That's it. Sending it back over to you, Skip.
Thank you, Dan. Now Jerome Sullivan will provide the highlights of the underwriting changes.
Hey, Skip. Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Jerome Sullivan. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm going to briefly cover the two main multifamily HUD programs. The 223F, which is for acquisition and refinancing, and the 221D4, which is for new construction or substantial rehabilitation projects. So talking about the 223F for a second, the advantage with the 223F is that, or one of the advantages is that you don't have the Davis-Bacon wage requirement to do a 223F. And HUD has changed one of the aspects of the 223F to make it more usable, in that you previously had a per unit rehab level, which was set at $6,500 a unit, and it was adjusted based on where you are in the country, and we can help you with the specifics. But basically, that level of rehab per unit has been increased, and it's actually been doubled, more than doubled. So now there's a lot more transactions which will fit in to the program as 223F loans versus 221D4 loans. That's a very exciting change. The other thing that HUD has done, essentially this is really focused on market rate transactions, is that they've basically modified the underwriting guidelines so that the loan amounts can be a little bit higher than they were previously. So with a 223F on a market rate deal, you can have a loan to value now of 85%, which is an increase from 83.3%, and the debt service coverage has decreased from 1.2 times to 1.176. So that's going to basically increase the amount of money on a given transaction. Switching over to the D4 for a second, the D4 is, again, for new construction or substantial rehabilitation. As Dan said, it's a program which allows you to lock your interest rate ahead of time and have that fixed rate for the entire period. That's a nice feature. And same thing with market rate transactions, HUD has changed the underwriting guidelines so that the D4 is a more robust product on a market rate transaction. There's some other general changes that HUD has implemented that I'm going to touch on briefly. And one of the most exciting changes is that HUD has changed MIP levels for a number of different products. I'm not going to go into detail on that. Annika is going to give you a little bit more detail on that in a few minutes. But while MIP for market rate deals that don't have special characteristics hasn't changed, the change in the underwriting guidelines helps those deals have higher loan proceeds, and then the changes in the MIP on the other products will basically help those loans have higher loan proceeds. Another change that HUD has pushed forward on the underwriting side, and again we're going to give you a little bit more detail on this in a few minutes, is that they have taken they've changed the way they look at replacement reserves, and it's a little bit more of a realistic approach than it had been previously. And the bottom line with the change is that on both the initial funding for the replacement reserve and then the annual funding for the replacement reserve should be lower than it had been previously under the new way that we're going to look at it under the revised guidelines. And so again, that's another great change because it's going to help, us be able to deliver you higher loan proceeds than we had been able to do previously. So as we've talked about, HUD's really out there trying to make things new, different, and better. So these are some of the changes they're doing on the underwriting side. That's it for me, Skip. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jerome. All right. Now I would like to ask Dan to discuss some of the program enhancements that have been made to the LIHTC program.
Sure. Thanks, Skip. So The HUD really is taking a proactive approach to expand their affordable portfolio. They still do want to do market rate production, but they realize that their affordable market share has dropped over the last several years. Therefore, they really have been listening to some of the industry coalitions out there and taking in their comments and applied that to the new MAP guide to better align some of the LIHTC programs with the borrower's needs. Therefore, the LIHTC programs now, if you do a D4 or a 223F, you can actually expand and get a more favorable loan parameter. So you can get up to 90% loan to value or loan to cost. You can also get debt service at a minimum out of 1.11 for certain transactions. So that's very good. An additional highlight is that the bridge loan can now be at the mortgage or entity level, which is more in line with the syndicator's needs, which results in a smoother closing. In addition, the written guidance allows for the bridge lender to have an identity of interest with the borrower, which allows us, Churchill, to serve as a bridge lender. Written guidance also provides for affordable projects to be processed direct to firm without requesting approval to bypass the pre-application stage. So, for example, it used to be on a 221D4, say, you would have a concept meeting, you would have a pre-application stage, and then you would have the firm application submission. So now you can actually bypass that pre-app stage, and you can save an overall 2 to 3 months on the overall processing. There's also a new pay-in schedule that provides an opportunity for higher equity pricing because of the less stringent pay-in requirements. And there's also, these are now mortgageable, which they were not allowed in the past. These can be all paid from now mortgage proceeds. The 223F program, which has been a pilot program that has been available for several years now, has proven to be effective and efficient by using the single underwriter model. HUD is now using this best practice in the pilot program for its other products, like the 221D4. We, Churchill, are an approved pilot lender and have already been making use of this in the transformation model. And again, HUD is also in the process of working with lenders in the NBA, the development of the D4 pilot program. And this program will incorporate many of the efficient changes developed in the 223F pilot program. Skip, I'll send it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next, Aniko Rakita will discuss the recent changes to the mortgage insurance premiums. Aniko?
Thank you, Skip. Aniko Rakita, and I'm going to talk to you about mortgage insurance premiums. So what is mortgage insurance premium? On all FHA-insured loans, mortgage insurance is the vehicle that allows for non-recourse financing. Of course, non-recourse feature of the HUD loan makes it a very attractive loan option for developers. These premiums are calculated as a percentage of the loan amount. There are two types of MIPs. The upfront MIPs are payable at closing, and the annual MIPs are payable monthly thereafter. HUD has reduced both upfront and ongoing MIPs this time. This reduction has already taken place. It's effective as of April 1st. So all new applications will use the lower MIPs in underwriting. So when will we see the biggest impact of this reduction? As you have heard so far, all these changes that were implemented are focusing on affordable and green housing. Before, upfront MIPs could range from 45 to 100 basis points, and annual MIPs could range from 45 to 95 basis points. Now, both upfront and annual MIPs can be as low as 25 basis points. That's a huge change. Now, more levels of affordable housing can enjoy MIP reductions. The properties with the most affordability can reduce MIPs to the lowest we have ever seen, which is 25 basis points. HUD is not only focusing on new affordable housing, this MIP reduction also targeting preservation. Most of the affordable housing portfolio in the U.S. was built prior to the 1980s, so these apartment complexes are more than 30 years old now. These MIP reductions will allow you, the developer, to renovate this housing, providing families with better quality places to live. These reductions will also allow to free up the capital needed to support a higher level of rehab, or in some cases, we have seen an increase in the number of affordable units. And if you're not an affordable housing developer, you will also benefit from the reduced MIPs. And that's when you go green. Market rate properties that are built with the green components can enjoy the largest decrease in the MIP rate, which we'll see in the next slide, and it will be as low as 25 basis points. So why are these MIP rate cuts so important to you? There are multiple benefits that you can see shortly. The reduced MIPs will provide savings in the development budget, and that's from the lower upfront MIPs that are part of your budget. Also, the ongoing operating costs will be reduced with the reduced annual MIPs that allow more flow to you. For example, if you look at a $15 million refinance loan, you could save up to $112,000 in upfront MIPs and $30,000 in annual MIPs. That's a big saving. Tenants also benefit. The green units can be 20% more energy efficient, keeping utility costs down. Keith, I believe you had a recent conversation with a developer about another great benefit of MIP reductions. Keith?
Thank you, Annika, and I think she has one more slide. Well, certainly when you're looking at these executions, what's it all about? Especially if you're the folks that are the developers, it's proceeds. How much do you get in proceeds, and cash flow, right? Those are the two big bogeys that you're always looking at, and actually everybody, including the lender, when they're underwriting these deals. Certainly, you get an MIP reduction for affordable, but you get the MIP reduction for market rate on green projects. And looking at some of these with some of our developers and sizing them, what we're finding is that there's certainly some additional cost associated with going green, but we're finding that that is more than offset by the MIP reduction to the point where it helps pay for the green implementation of the green part of it, and also we're seeing that it additionally increases proceeds over and above that in some instances. So when you look at this, I can't overemphasize how important it is to be thinking about that if you're looking at a market rate project. And our co-presenters, partner engineer and science, are going to be talking a lot about that because it's something that if you all get comfortable with and embrace, can be something meaningful to the bottom line of your projects. With that, Annika, I'll give it back to you.
On this slide, we just wanted to show you the 4 categories where these changes will be implemented. The first one is market rate. HUD did not reduce upfront or annual MIPs for market rate projects. The only reduction, if you are looking at a market rate transaction, would be if you go green, and that's all the way down to the 25 basis points. The next category is the affordable housing category that includes development with at least 10% of affordable units. These can be LIHTC units or rental assistance units. They are eligible for a 35 basis point MIP. The broadly affordable category is your typical LIHTC project with at least 90% of the units having either space assistance or part of the LIHTC.
I'll send you a quick email too, and
and as we have mentioned before, all the programs benefit. Even for market rate, if you go green, your MIP will be all the way down to 25 basis points. To qualify for the green reduction, the project has already achieved or the proposed improvements will achieve an industry-recognized standard for green building. You will hear more about FIA's green project from Partner Engineering in just a second. But before we get into all the details, I just wanted to leave you with a couple takeaways and encourage you to try the HUD execution next time you're looking at an affordable or market rate project. We have discussed the benefits of the HUD financing, which at the end will provide you with a non-recourse, low interest, and long-term permanent loan. And if you add the benefits from the most recent changes, for example, higher LTVs, higher proceeds, the savings due to the MIP reductions, and not to mention and emphasize the shorter process times, we think that this is one of the best, if not the best, execution for affordable and green projects today. So we really encourage you to take a look at a HUD execution next time you're looking at financing for your project. And with that, Skip, I will give it back to you.
Thank you, Annika. All right, now we would like to have our guest speakers, Brad Fountain, Kelsey Shaw, and Angelique Cruz of Partner Engineering and Science. They will discuss energy efficiency and changes to the replacement reserve schedule, along with environmental issues.
Can Bonda and you come in for a second?
Thank you, Skip. Partner Engineering and Partner, we are proud to participate in this webinar, and we appreciate you inviting us. Partner Engineering is equally proud to be Churchill's partner in providing national due diligence coverage for HUD programs and other agency lending platforms. Our 650 team members, 28 offices around the country, are proud to support the Churchill family. So thank you for inviting us. Our professional team today includes Kelsey Shaw, our account manager with our sister company, Partner Energy, to discuss the new HUD MAP Guide energy changes, reviewing the exciting MIP reduction opportunities. I will share the new changes for reserve for replacement and the implementation of international building code changes. Angelique Cruz, our HUD specialist for environmental solutions and all issues concerning the phase ones, will share her insights on the recent environmental HUD MAP Guide changes. With that, Kelsey, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. So as Brad mentioned, I'm an account manager at Partner Energy. We are a sister company to Partner Engineering and Science that focuses specifically on energy efficiency engineering and sustainability consulting. My role at Partner Energy has a specific focus in the multifamily segment. And, you know, we've worked on hundreds of green building projects throughout the country, and we're pretty excited that HUD has now put this new focus on energy efficiency and sustainable building. That said, I know a lot of this may be new information for lenders, borrowers, building operators, etc. But in the interest of time, I will try not to be too granular. But of course, I'm happy to address follow-up questions that get submitted after the webinar concludes. So, green and energy efficiency housing for HUD's MIP reduction. What are the program goals? Simply to increase energy and water efficiency, reduce operating costs, improve indoor air quality, improve resident comfort, and ultimately reduce overall impact on the environment. You know, buildings have a pretty big impact on the energy use throughout the country, and HUD is really interested in basically taking the opportunity to help motivate financial reasons to help stem, you know, environmental impacts from the building segment. So there are borrower benefits as well. On the next slide, you will see some of those listed. For both new construction projects as well as existing buildings, the MIP reduction can help provide resources for higher construction standards, and then lower maintenance, repair, and operations costs. And also, in addition, you know, green certifications can be a feather in your cap, so to speak, in the marketplace, but there is also evidence in the industry that green properties enjoy higher rents and lower vacancy. So there is something for borrowers in this as well. Next, let's go over the basic eligibility requirements. So in order to qualify for the MIP reduction, you need to commit to two things. One, you need to commit to an industry-recognized standard for green building, also known as a green certification in the industry, and obtain an ENERGY STAR score of 75 or above. At the time of application, you have to have a third party, such as your energy consultant. They need to independently verify that, as planned, it is reasonable to expect your property, whether it's new construction or rehab, to achieve both of those things. Next slide. So I'm going to speak a little bit now on what those two commitments are. What do they mean? What is a green certification? What is an ENERGY STAR score of 75? So in a nutshell, green building certifications, they are programs that give points essentially to, or credit to projects that for a variety of different green categories that can include energy efficiency, sustainable materials, and impact on the community and the environment. There are a variety of programs that HUD recognizes. You see some listed on this slide here. Enterprise Green Communities, LEED, ENERGY STAR certification, Earthcraft, Earth Advantage, Green Point Rated, New Home National Green Building Standards. There are quite a few that HUD recognizes, and they're recognized in the industry. So there are several options. Now, onto the next slide, what is an ENERGY STAR score of 75? ENERGY STAR Portfolio Manager is a free online tool. It's a joint venture between the EPA and the DOE. And what it essentially does is take energy usage data for properties, and it compares those properties with others throughout the country that are of similar size, use, characteristics, and climate zone. And the score that you receive for your property through this tool, your ENERGY STAR score, or SEP, Statement of Energy Performance, it's a representation of how your property stacks up with others in terms of energy efficiency. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over the basic process for new construction, and then later I'll go over the basic process for existing buildings. So in the beginning of your new construction project, you're going to want to do a few things. As I had stated earlier, at application, you have to have a third party verify that you're going to be able to achieve both of your commitments. And how do you do that? Essentially, you have your energy consultant conduct what's called a feasibility study. And that feasibility study takes a good look at the details of your planned project and compares and contrasts that with the different options that you have for a green certification program, and basically tries to see what's going to be the best and most appropriate green certification for your property. In certain cases, there might be some regional or local requirement that you must do some kind of green certification, in which case that's pretty clear cut. In other cases, you might have many to choose from, and we will look to see what's going to be the most cost effective, what's going to be the best route for your particular property. In addition, we have to put together an energy model, which I'll get into in a second, that helps us determine that you will receive your ENERGY STAR score of 75. During construction, it's also really important, once you've gotten to that phase, to keep in mind your green certification goal and your ENERGY STAR goal, because at the end, within 12 to 15 months of completion of your project, you will have to certify to HUD that you have both received your green certification and that you have received your ENERGY STAR score of 75 or above. So next slide kind of goes back a tiny bit to how you get your SETI score, your Statement of Energy Design Intent. In order to figure out where your property will score when it's not even built yet and when bills are not available, what energy consultants have to do is create an energy model, which is a computer simulation of your property. We take things like location, building envelope, systems, lighting, appliances, controls, and we, next slide please, essentially create a simulated copy of what your building will be like and how it will operate once it's built. the image that you see on this slide is from an energy modeling software that is a visual representation of what we've put into the computer software. And it should give us data on how the property uses energy and how it operates. There are lots of different energy softwares, but they all do the same thing. Then the next step is to take a program in Energy Star that they've created for this purpose, and it's called Energy Star Target Finder, and it takes our projected energy use for your property and spits out a score. This is your SETI score, your Statement of Energy Design Intent. You want that to be 75 or even higher, just to guarantee that you'll be able to meet your commitment at the end of your project. Next, I'll go over the process for existing buildings. It's a little bit more complicated for existing buildings in that you have a few more options, and also because you already have utility bills in an existing building. So up front, during your due diligence, before your application, you're going to want to take your bills, and you need 12 months of bills, and get your SEP score, your Energy Star score. Next step is to determine which green building certification is going to be best for your existing building. And similar to new construction, when you have kicked off your project and if you're doing any renovations or any improvements, you just need to do those with your goals in mind. Make sure that whatever you needed to do to obtain your green certification, that you stay on task with that. And similarly, if you have to make some improvements to improve your Energy Star score, don't forget to keep up on those and make sure that you install the energy measures as recommended. Then at the end of your construction and your rehab, you have to make sure that by then you've received your Energy Star score of 75 and that you have received your green building certification. Next slide. So for an existing building, it's a little bit more detailed because you have access to energy information. So you need 12 full months, and that must include both common areas and owner-paid accounts and also tenant accounts. We recommend 25% sampling. And we will take that information and we'll put it into Energy Star, and we will see what score you get. If you score 75, you're well on your way. If you don't score 75, if you're below 75, then HUD will trigger what's called an energy audit. An energy audit is just a closer look at your property to look for basically low-hanging fruit for energy improvements. On the next slide, you will see most energy audits will give you a report of the scope of work that we recommend to help get your score up, a description of what all of those measures are, and estimates for cost, for savings, for payback, and most importantly, what your post-energy audit and post-renovation score will be. And on the next slide, you just see an example of how if you have a current score, then you will see that with some certain improvements, your new score will go up and it will be in the will be past the threshold of what is required for HUD. Now, if you already score a 75, then you have some options. There is a existing building certification that is Energy Star certification for existing buildings, which really only requires you to have a score of 75. However, it also requires you 100% of all of the utility data for your entire property. So the next step could be to figure out how to get all of your tenants to provide that information. In certain cases, local utilities will aggregate the data for you for the entire property, which can be very easy. Unfortunately, it's not all that common. Some utilities may have an authorization form where tenants can sign, and then you can access that data directly from the utility company. So there are a variety of ways depending on the utility serving your property. But that is definitely one viable option. If you get 100% of the data for your property and you're at 75, that is an acceptable certification. But what do you do if it's just not possible to get 100% of the bills for the property? no worries, there are other certifications for existing buildings. You know, those include Green Point rated for existing buildings, Enterprise Green Communities, and those focus not just on the bills, but on some other measures such as sustainable materials and impact on residents, impact on the community, etc. So there are other options, and you'll have a pretty good sense of how easy it's going to be for you to get all of the utility data for your property when you do your initial benchmarking score, because you're going to need a sample. And with that sample, you'll know, oh, it was pretty easy, oh, maybe it's a little bit more of a challenge. So you can gauge at that point which certification you will be likely to go after. So, you know, in a nutshell, I know that it's a lot of information, and while it might seem like a lot to do to qualify, HUD really has designed these benefits to be generous enough to really encourage and motivate green building. And I know from experience, you know, we've seen plenty of examples where, you know, as long as you have some planning and the right team, it is absolutely possible to achieve this. And with that, I will hand it back over to Brad.
Thank you, Kelsey. That's a great overview of some very exciting energy-related opportunities for the MIP reduction. I'll discuss the reserve replacement schedules. A few years back, HUD issued Notice 2012-27, which many will recall required intrusive testing, but it also revamped the reserves replacement schedule from the antiquated 37-year schedule to a more realistic 20-year table. Along with that change, HUD gave clear guidance on the funding reserve requirements and implemented the 5%. For the carryover balance year over year, it needed to be a minimum of 5% of the uninflated 20-year total. Unfortunately, this made it hard for a lot of properties to maintain their historic reserves, mostly the ones that were in need of some hefty repairs during the 20-year term, either due to age or intrusive findings. As Jerome mentioned earlier, the latest iteration of the reserve for replacement schedule is a lot more beneficial to the borrower and to the lender, as it puts the focus primarily on the first 10 years and only requires those years to be balanced based on 10% of the inflated reserves for the near term. The remaining 10 years can dip below this 10% threshold, as long as the balance is not more than 50% of the amortized principal loan balance. As far as the implementation of the International Building Code, the level of repair definitions allows for a clear delineation of repairs in the CNA, and this aids to the shift in allowing a heavier 223F project to be refinanced without going through the hoops of a sub-rehab 221D4 program. This gives the borrower flexibility to get some much-needed work done on their properties without enduring the lengthy process of an architectural and engineering cost review. While some scheduled or recommended repairs may require additional documentation between the owner and architect and GC, the review is not exhaustive. Also, the high-cost threshold has been increased from $6,500 to $15,000 per unit, and the definition of system was refined to be clear when determining if 50% replacement of 2 or more systems may trigger a sub-rehab. For the level repairs, just let me briefly go over those quickly. There are 3 of them. Level 1 repair is like in kind, which includes the removal and replacement or the covering of existing materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures using materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures that serve the same purpose. Level 2 alterations are those above $15,000, and that includes the reconfiguration of space, addition or elimination of any doors or windows, reconfiguration or extension of any systems, or the installation of any equipment. And level 3 alterations of the work area that exceeds 50% of the aggregate area of building. Obviously, the higher level of repair, the more documentation and review via general contractor and architect is required. As far as the inspections per unit, requirements for unit inspection were rather vague in the previous version of the HUD map guide, which hadn't been updated since 2011. Minimum sample requirements now have been clarified, stating that for properties less than 10 years in age, 10% must be inspected, and anything older, not less than 25% of units must be inspected. The selection of units must be proportionately distributed among unit types, buildings, floor levels, and otherwise pretty much random. That takes care of it for me. Angelique, thank you for joining us today. Let me turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brad. There were not too many environmental changes, but certainly some changes that we anticipated and some we did not. To jump right in, one anticipated change was to the radon requirement. Radon guidance now states radon must be performed under the direct supervision of a radon professional that is nationally certified and listed from the license from the state where applicable. They must test 25% of ground level units per building, and they must test upper floor units, 10% of upper level units per building and per floor. Change to the radon mitigation state that if less than 100% of ground floor units are tested and radon is found above the threshold or 4.0 picocuries per liter, then all ground level units must be mitigated. This is per property and not just per building. It's noteworthy to state the states that require an initial 100% ground floor testing. These are Florida, Kansas, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Nebraska, New Jersey, and Ohio. There are a couple of other states that are also moving towards 100% ground floor testing, and these states are Pennsylvania and Kentucky. Another mitigation requirement for radon is a certification of completion must be provided by the mitigation professional. Next slide, please. MAP guidelines, thank you. The MAP guidelines also note changes to floodplain management. The changes state refinance projects are exempt, however, flood insurance is still required. Ingress, egress, or parking within a special flood hazard area must comply with floodplain management regulations. And incidental portions now require a or comparable restriction placed on the property's continued use. This must be permanent. An incidental portion is still not quantitatively defined, but it is protected. Please note to address.
Whoever has background.
Very easy then for the arms to run off, and then we get this lock. So how we measure that is we draw a line from the center of his head to the center of his hips. That line now, as you can see, is leaning towards.
Excuse me.
Hello, we have somebody that's on that needs to be on mute, that we can hear a conversation. Hello?
Sounds like they're muted.
All right.
Please note to
sorry.
Certainly, thank you. Please note to address special flood hazard areas, a letter of MAP revision, or a LOMA, LOMAR, LOMR, or a letter of MAP amendment, or LOMA, LOMA, can be prepared to address the special flood hazard concern. In case you're not too familiar with a LOMAR or a LOMA, a LOMAR, L-O-M-R, is obtained for a property that has had the elevation altered by fill dirt, and a LOMA, L-O-M-A, is obtained for a property with elevation that has not been altered, i.e. no fill dirt. Also, please keep in mind, per the guidelines, an unacceptable proximity to hazards may result in rejection of the application. This means floodways or coastal high hazard areas. Last but not least, the MAP guidelines note changes to nuisance and hazards, and that includes pipelines and towers. For pipelines, the guidelines now require that an acceptable separation distance must be conducted to evaluate the area of concern for an on-site structure. The acceptable separation distance is what we use to calculate an area of concern for above-ground storage tanks. So before, the guidelines cited that no on-site structure must be within 10 feet from the outer boundary of a pipeline easement, whereas now we calculate that area of concern. For towers, an engineering report is now required if a structure is within the fall zone of a tower. And while that's not all of the map guide changes for environmental items, that's it for now. Brad, back to you.
Angelique, thank you very much. Very comprehensive. We appreciate that. I think that wraps it up for Partner Engineering and Partner Energy. So Skip, I thank you again for including Partner Engineering and Partner Energy. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Well, everyone, this concludes our webinar. As you can see, several of the program changes will have a positive impact on your bottom line. I hope this will be helpful in your decision to consider HUD-insured financing for your existing and future projects. If you have any questions or if you'd like to discuss your property specifically, please contact us directly by either email or telephone. Our email addresses and telephone numbers can be found on our website. Again, thank you for attending and goodbye.